In today's episode, I'm talking to Anne Bishop from Weaving Hope, an online store selling fair trade toys designed to help toddlers learn through play. Anne has had a varied career, working her way through from being a secretary to being a business owner via charity management and an MBA. She's particularly passionate about facilitating the development of others and now harnesses that in her business. Hi, Anne.
Good morning. No, good afternoon. Yes, hi. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Well, that introduction, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about here. So do you want to start off by giving us a little outline as to how you came to start Weaving Hope?
Well, actually, I didn't start it. It was started by a friend of mine whose surname was Hope. After she and her husband had taken some time out and been volunteering in Sri Lanka, which is where our toys are made. So they saw the toys, they got to know the women who were making them. And when they came back to the UK, said, do you know what, these really should be being available to kids here in the UK. So they set up the company. And because everything is made from hand woven cotton, the name Weaving Hope came to them. I got to know Nikki through serving on the same board as her. We were both on the board of a housing association, and I completely fell in love with the toys because they're gorgeous. They're colourful, they're fun, they're quite quirky. And so in 2015, I had to change from being a charity CEO because my husband's job changed and we moved and it was too far to commute. And I was sitting thinking, what shall I do next, kind of thing. I mean, not quite as simple as that. But she was talking about what was happening with her business. And I said, oh, do you know what? I'm up for a new challenge. And so I joined her in the business. And then over time, I bought her out. But what I didn't realize at the time was just what or how much of a challenge it was going to be. So I've definitely put on a few grey hairs since then, but you know, it's a way to get involved, isn't it? You know, and it was that in lots of ways, it's that passion, that falling in love with the toys that helps keep me going, as well as obviously the more subtle educational learning through play kind of things behind the scenes. But if I didn't love the toys, I'm sure I wouldn't have stuck with it.
I think that what you've just said there, I think so many people can resonate with that. The fact that if you knew when you started what you would have to be dealing with and doing once you got started and once you were trying to make a success of it, I'm not sure how many of us would actually be brave enough to start in the first place. But as you say, the passion keeps you going, doesn't it? So when you took over, so when you joined the business, then presumably at what stage was the business at then? Did it already have the website? Was it already making sales online? How did
it was making some, but not through its own website. So the website that we had then wasn't transactional. We were only on a third-party platform, not on the highstreet.com. And there were a couple of wholesale clients. And so over time, I've developed the wholesale clients. I've become a member of BAFTS, which is Fair Trade Network for shops here in the UK. So a number of the fair trade shops in this country sell our products, and some of the other gift shops. Some of them are just gift shops, but quite a lot of them have an ethical purpose or come from that ethical perspective, which is why fair trade is popular with them. I also have gone on to some other platforms. I do I go out to markets at weekends, which I love, and we can maybe talk about that separately, I don't know. And then last year I knew I needed to get a transactional website, and the push of the pandemic last year made me finally get on with it. So I signed up for Shopify, and I'm slowly learning how to make it work on Shopify.
So have you did the website on Shopify, or did you get somebody else to help you with that?
No, I've done it from scratch.
How did you find that?
I'm sure when people go and have a look, they'll be like, oh, I wonder why she did that. Believe me, I'm literally in the phase of I have a go. If it works, wonderful. If it doesn't, I look around to see, well, what could I improve?
Yeah.
And
The
to be
website,
honest, I think
looks
there's a lot
great.
of websites that are like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're all kind of learning as we go, aren't we?
Well, yes, yeah. And I mean, most of us are not in the position to go out and find some fancy developer that kind of has got it all nailed down, you know, and knows exactly what to do and how to do it. So we're all in the same boat, and you just have to do what you feel is the best the time. And as you say, evolve as you go along.
So I've had to learn lots of different things,
Yeah.
from taking photographs with a light box and an eye, through to how do you handle export documentation for importing the toys into this country and things like that. So and that is part of the challenge, isn't it? And it's part of the reason why we love what we do. It's not just that we're passionate about our particular product or our particular service. It's that sense of learning lots of different skills and not being stuck in any one groove. You know, there's constant adaptations and there's new things to explore. And yeah, sometimes that gets overwhelming. But mostly it's fun. It's a challenge. It's something new that you're learning. You're growing and you're developing. And it's just, you know, sometimes by the end of the week you sit down and think, oh, goodness me.
Well, I think, to be honest, that's probably a common theme with a lot of people who have their own businesses, is the fact that side of things appeals to them. The fact that if they were doing the same thing, I know for me, if I'm doing the same thing every day in, day out, I get so bored, so demoralized and demotivated that I just can't be bothered, quite frankly.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, because my history was being a bookkeeper. Well, bookkeeping's great once you get into it, but it's the same stuff every day, every week, every month. It's repeating the same processes. So I think that's very what you've said about the fact that, yes, there are a lot of challenges and a lot of things that you have to learn, but I think that's probably why we do what we do, isn't it? That appeals to us, to keep us interested. I wanted to go back and talk about, you mentioned about Not on the High Street. How did you find that? Because I know there are a lot of retailers that might be out there considering, you know, they might have the kind of product that would work on Not on the High Street. They might be considering it. I know it's quite expensive to sell on there, isn't it? But what was your experience like on there? And are you still selling on there?
We do still sell through them, and I have to say, I think they are excellent. Not only in terms of the opportunity it gives you to get in front of a vast range of people that would take a long time to get in front of just sort of on your own, but their back office is phenomenal. The everything from the invoicing, the accounting, all the smooth software behind it, you just don't realize that when you're a customer. When you simply go in and go click 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 and buy, you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. And I think their software investment has been utterly worthwhile. It's amazing. So yes, it's relatively expensive, but then when you think what you're getting for it, for me, it's most definitely worth it. Yeah. And I suppose there are lots of other platforms around now, whereas back when Nikki started in 2009, there weren't a lot of other options. And it's been quite interesting, because I've signed up for some of these sort of, feel like the ethical or the green kind of platforms, and they are nowhere near as sophisticated or as smooth as Not on the High Street yet, because obviously Norths has been around for that much longer, and they've put the investment into the software, and so for me, most definitely worth it. And a little bit pricey in comparison to others, but they are investing that money. It's going to good places.
And as you say, it does put you in front of a lot of people, and it's a bit like Amazon, but not like Amazon in as much as people trust that they're buying from a big company, or they perceive that they're buying from a big company, even though they are actually buying from lots of individual small companies. But there is that trust element, that they've got the trust and the reputation of Not on the High Street, and so that you've got that on your side as well, haven't you? So
and it's also actually quite a community amongst the partners, which is what people like me are called. And so there's you know, everything from the weekly newsletter, the training sessions, the get-togethers, the swapping of ideas. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff support as well.
Yeah, yeah. So what you mentioned you're on a couple of other platforms. Are you on? Are there any other major ones that you're on as well, like Etsy? Did you sell on Etsy or
No,
anything
no,
like that?
I didn't. We didn't originally go onto Etsy because it's not us that's making it, and then
Mm,
Etsy was initially for people making their own things.
yeah,
Um, and then when there was the sort of third party option, to be honest, we didn't really see the point in going down that route. For us, yeah, not on the high street is brilliant, and that taps into all kinds of people. But those who are, if you like, our ideal customer are people who care about not just learning through play, but the fair trade element, the
yeah,
ethical element, the environmental impact element, all of which is covered in fair trade. So I've actually gone with what I would call those who've set themselves up as ethical or green or deliberately, fair
mm,
trade stroke, all the other kind of criteria that there are around.
yeah,
So that's the route I've chosen to go at the moment. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
let's
it
see how it
fits.
goes. Some
It
some of them are
fits.
very new,
Yeah.
so I have no idea whether they're going to work out or not. But that's our online world, isn't it?
Well, yes,
We try things and see.
yeah, yeah. You have to kind of put yourself out there and put your faith in these businesses, because everybody's out there. They're all there trying to make a living and trying to make it work. And if people don't
Mhm.
actually put their trust in them to sell their products, then it's never going to work for anybody, is it? So
Mm.
yeah, that makes sense. When you're mentioned in the introduction there that you have an MBA, and so you do have
Oh,
that
right, yeah,
business knowledge. How
yeah.
much? Because I know, and I have been guilty of this, I know there are so many people out there that think that they need a certificate or a qualification in order to do something. How much has having an MBA and doing, learning that side of sort of business strategy and that kind of thing, how much do you think that has helped you when it's come to running your business?
I certainly don't think it's been essential. It's actually helped me much more in other things that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was a charity chief exec, or the various boards that I serve or have served on as a company director, they have probably been places that I've tapped into my MBA knowledge much more. I think for me, because I didn't get a degree first time round, as it were,
Mm,
so I went back to study and got the MBA in my 40s. And in lots of ways, I suspect probably the biggest thing it did for me was give me confidence that a lot of the things I was doing actually were the right sorts of things to do, as in there was academic research that backed them up, and I was doing them for a reason. I just didn't kind of understand what the reason was. So I absolutely loved doing my MBA, made a lot of friends all over the globe. So thank goodness we have Facebook, because I can stay in touch with them. But I just learned so much. And I think it was more than anything, it was the confidence it gave me to do things. But in a way, I kind of have a bit of an advantage in that I grew up in a small business family. So
right.
my parents had a village bakery, and
Mm-hmm.
we literally lived in the flat above the shop, and the bakery was behind. So you just absorb so much if you live in that kind of environment that you don't even realize. So you see, I mean, I remember I was only about 5 or 6, and I knew the price of every item throughout the shop, because back then prices were fixed.
Yeah.
That's how old I am. But as a 5-year-old, I didn't consciously learn them, but I knew exactly how much half a pound of butter was, or a loaf of bread, or and so you just absorb an awful lot of learning and how to deal with people, whether it's customers or staff or suppliers. And I'm sure a lot of that has also helped.
Mm, I'm sure.
Much as I loved doing all the academic theory and stuff, that was great. That was a brilliant time in my life. Yeah.
I'll
Mm,
be honest. I did study with the Open University when nearly 20 years ago now, and I loved that. It was computing. I did computing and stuff, and I
yeah.
stopped. But a few years ago, I decided, which is why I asked the question. Thought, oh, if I had a master's in digital marketing, people would be much more likely to hire me and work with me. So I started doing I got one term in, and I'm like, this is so not for me. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, and I bowed out gracefully. And so It's not for everybody, but you know,
No, it isn't. It
you
isn't.
obviously
Absolutely,
it
it
was the
isn't.
right thing
But
for you to do at
yeah.
the time. Yeah. What do you think, because you've got a lot of experience, what do you find is the hardest part of running your business? I love asking this
I
question.
think at the moment, no, I did jot down, what some of my struggles are.
Yeah.
For me, because I am not what you would call a digital native, actually the biggest struggle for me is the whole online thing.
Mm.
Both in and I've kind of been thinking, why is it that some online things terrify me, some online things just completely baffle me? And I think it's because I'm from that generation where, certainly in the early days of computing, you sat with a paper instruction manual and you had to go, you had to do this, followed by that, followed by the other, or else you lost everything. And I remember a couple of absolute disasters where we lost really important stuff because there wasn't autosave and the, click here, and if it didn't work, you could undo, and those kind of
Youngsters
things.
have no idea.
Exactly. Whereas they just go, oh, that didn't work. Okay, fine, let's do it this way. And
Control Z.
what? So that's the biggest thing. I think the second thing is, although I am somebody who's reasonably self-reliant, I have missed that opportunity to bounce ideas. And I guess I wasn't even conscious I was doing it. But whether it's over a cup of coffee or the water cooler, or actually being in an environment with other chief executives where you're thrashing out what's going on in the sector at the moment and how are we going to handle it, how are we going to present, whatever. It's that sort of interaction that I miss. So things like, business groups online, Facebook groups have been really, really valuable for me. But there's nothing quite like that chat face to face, is there?
No, there isn't. And of course with I mean, the fact that if you're working for yourself and working as I do, and looks like you do as well, working from home, you haven't got that. But at least, and of course COVID's just made it all even worse, where we couldn't go out to our co-working space once a week just to kind of see another human being. It's very hard. I struggle with that side of it as well, I must admit, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but do you find sometimes that you'll have an idea and you think it probably is a good idea and it probably is going to work, but sometimes you just need to voice it to somebody else in order to kind of get it straight in your head? I don't know about you. Is that do you find?
Yeah, and I think the thing I notice it most is where I'm kind of wrestling with something and I keep just seeing it through the same filter. And if I had colleagues, I would go and say, look, this is how I'm looking at it, but I'm sure there's another perspective or there's another way through it. And then somebody they'll say something or they'll ask the one question, you're like, oh, of course, so it's that element of it as well.
Having another lens to look at it through, I suppose, isn't it? So is it still just you in the business, or do you have anybody else helping you as well?
It is at the moment. I had grand plans for expansion before COVID hit.
They're still there, dear. I'm sure.
Yes, just, they won't happen for, another couple of years probably. One of the things people don't necessarily realize, and certainly I didn't before I did it, was that the toy business is incredibly seasonal. Everybody wants you at Christmas, so that end quarter of the year is really busy. And yes, there are birthdays throughout the year, but actually they're not evenly spaced. There's even research that shows different months have different percentages of the birthdays across the year. Wow. I was fascinated by that when I was looking for ideas for a newsletter, and I thought, oh, what is there about birthday? Anyway, we won't go there.
Probably Christmas and New Year parties probably has something to do with a baby boom in September and October.
Surprisingly, it is the end of the year. Yeah, quite. It is that sort of time that birthdays go up. So what you have to think about is, would you take on a member of staff for the whole year?
Yeah.
Or do you look to have temporary positions from, say, September to December, when dispatch particularly gets very intense? And so I was at the point of sort of looking at maybe for that Q4, taking on some temporary staff to see how it went.
Yeah.
And then depending on what happened, then I would have looked at, do I keep some of them on? Do I look at maybe employing a social media manager or some other kind of swap? But as I say, COVID hit,
Yeah.
put paid to those plans for the moment. So they are parked,
On
but
the
they're
back
not
burner.
abandoned. Because a part of my passion with all of this is I don't just want to encourage children to develop, but I want to be able to give staff, and particularly women who may have other challenges, those opportunities to grow and development, because the folks who actually make the toys are mostly women. And part of the philosophy of the woman who set up the business in Sri Lanka was to give women, particularly in rural areas, an opportunity to have some kind of economic activity that would A, generate money, and B, be flexible enough that they could be doing it when they're not needed on the farms for planting or harvest or any of those kind of tasks.
Yeah.
And I love that philosophy, which is, it's all about what works for the women, not the business needs this and you've got to do it, or you're not a, you can't be part of us.
Yeah.
And that's what I would want to do with any staff that I had. So whether it's flexible working, whether it's having hours that fit with childcare, whether it's giving opportunities to people who perhaps lack confidence, but need to do some real work to get it onto their CV, or as part of their courses, or those kinds of things. So when I come to employ, that's the sort of opportunity I want to offer, because that fits with my ethos, and it also fits with the ethos of the people who are making the toys in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. And there will be a lot of, as you say, a lot of people who will need that kind of flexibility and will fit in with that for you. I'm just thinking that literally this morning, my daughter got a phone call to say, you need to come to the school because her child had cut on the face and all. And there's so many people, and to be able to work for a company that understands that, okay, today we have to cut your day short, but it's a two-way street then. I think people are more willing to bend over backwards for their employer if they know that their employer is also going to be flexible with them, isn't it? So I think that's a lovely idea. I really like that. I'm just curious, I don't know why this popped into my head while I was just sitting here. Do you actually pack all the parcels and send them out yourself, or do you have like a fulfillment?
At the moment.
You do?
I do it myself at the moment. You can see why I was thinking about taking somebody on to help with the Christmas rush.
Not surprised.
Yes. There are times when every surface in the house has either got, boxes or toys or order sheets with things being ticked off them. So yes, I desperately want to move out and be able to have the space to employ the staff and manage that side a bit more effectively. But yeah, for the moment,
in good time, because it will all come, I'm sure, won't it?
I hope so. Yeah.
The toys are beautiful, and I encourage people, not just people who have children, but I just encourage everybody to go and have a look at your website, because we'll link to it on the show notes. But it's like fabric and fabric play food, and it's not just like little toy animals and things like that, but this whole play food plates and things like that. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think there's so much more awareness of the whole not just the as in eco-friendly, planet friendly, but there's so many more people that want to buy brands that are people friendly, so not exploiting people in third world countries or whatever. And I think that's so important that I think we need more businesses like you, I think, to kind of fly the flag, so that if people vote with their wallet,
and also to do it with quality items. This isn't stuff that's been amateurishly put together.
Yeah, very
Sri
good
Lanka.
point.
They've been doing it for nearly 30 years now. They've got accreditation
Yeah,
with the World Fair Trade Organization. They are absolutely rigorous in their safety standards and their environmental standards and things. So it's because I think in the early days, fair trade and the ethical stuff felt a little bit homespun, but it
mm,
is so much better now.
yeah,
And so for me, it's a privilege to be able to bring these toys into the UK and sell them here, knowing both the women who've been making them, but also all the effort that they put into doing them well, to doing them beautifully, to doing them safely.
yeah. And it's yeah, I wish you every success, and it's been a privilege talking to you as well, Anne, because I love to hear
Yes,
everybody's story that
thank
comes
you.
on here. um, and yeah, I wish you every success, and I look forward to when you are expanding and have your employees and somebody else to do your packing for you.
Yes,
And
that will be
I know
good.
it's only May, but I know for a fact that anybody who's in your kind of industry is already planning for Christmas.
Oh, yes.
So I wish you every success with that, and thank you very much for talking to me today.
That's all right. It's been really interesting. Thank you very much, Sarah.
You're welcome.